Welcome to the From the Shadows podcast. I'm your host, Shane Grove. And before we get started with this week's episode, I just want to remind you, if you can't get enough of the From the Shadows podcast, go check us out at the FromTheShadowsPodcast.com. There's links to all of our social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Patreon, our store. If you want to buy an Ozark Holler t-shirt, that's where you go do it. And there's a contact button, and the contact button will let you send an email directly to me, and I will read it and get back a hold of you. And hopefully you have a story you want to come on and share with our listeners. And also, if you want to get a hold of me directly, you can find me at Shane Grove Author on Instagram, or just send a message on some of our Facebook pages. I will get it. Nita will make sure I get it. And I'll get back to you. So whatever you want to do, just come hang out, listen to some episodes, and interact. We'd love to have you. So with that being said, my social media queen, Nita, sometimes finds posts that have comments on with very interesting paranormal stories that I can't help but reach out to the people who shared these stories and say, hey, we want to hear more about that. With that being said, I can't wait for everybody to hear this account because it's a very unique account. So welcome to the show, Alex.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
It's great to have you. And I'm looking very forward to having you tell the whole story about what happened to you. So I'm going to let you take it away. Give as much detail about where and when and anything, and just let's get into it.
Okay. We had gone up to my grandma and grandpa's house in Hood River, Oregon. That is, I believe, north or something of Portland, Oregon, is the biggest city near where Hood River is. It's about 2 hours away from it. Anyway, I was in Hood River. I was 7 going on 8. And this was July 5th, 1978. I remember it clearly because we were, like I said, we were up there for the July 4th weekend. And I had been, with my grandma, we'd been picking blackberries. She had made pie. She'd made jam. We'd done all kinds of stuff. And we'd been outside all day playing with my cousins and all of that. So they went home, and I stayed the night with my grandma and grandpa. And it was about 1:30 in the morning. I woke up because I had to go to the bathroom, right? So I went to the bathroom, took care of business, and I came back into the bedroom. Now, the house is... it was facing the woods at the time. I have no idea what it looks like now. It's been sold and it's no longer in our family. So I don't really know how it looks today, but I can tell you that I was in the back bedroom. If you're in the house, it would be the back bedroom, and you walk in the bedroom, there's a window on the right and a window on the left. The window on the left is where I saw what happened. Give me a second. It's been all these years, but still talking about this really gives me the willies. I'm not trying to be weird. We had above our window. The window was like right here, and above the window, there's a sensor with a light on it, and it kicks on if something walks by. My grandpa Lee had that on there because he would get up at like 2 or 3 in the morning and go to work at the local sawmill. And so anyway, I get up and I'm walking back into the bedroom, and I'm looking at the left window, and I'm going to get back in my bed. And as I walk into the room, that light kicks on. And so I'm thinking to myself, right, my grandpa probably is getting up, going to work. Maybe I can knock on the window and wave at him, right? So I walk up to the window, and I saw out my window, it was about It was a few feet away. There was a gigantic albino Bigfoot. It had like it was just huge. I mean, that thing, it was like 4.5 feet at the shoulders. It was like, I would say 8.5 feet tall would be my guess. Um, and it was massive. And it it scared me so bad I couldn't do anything. I was like frozen. I couldn't speak. I couldn't think. It's like my mind just went blank, completely and utterly blank. And I'm looking out the window, and this thing had its hand over its eyes. And everybody always says, "Was it a bear? Was it a bear?" You know, it was not a bear. It didn't have paws, it had hands. Now, the hands were weird because where our thumb is right here, its thumb was further down on its arm, about like right here. And its hands were frigging massive, like the size of like a large shovel or a boat, like a boat oar, like you used to row in the water with the rowboat. It was about that size, and they were just huge hands. And it had hair all over its body that was long and white. It was probably about 3 or 4 inches long all over the body. The head was conical, like this, in the back, like that. And it looked at me. I looked at it. It walked up to the window. It bent down and it leaned in. And it was like this. But like I said, the thumbs were further down, right? And it looks in the window at me. And it had these weird reddish pink eyes. Have you ever seen like albino rabbits or mice or things like that? How they have those weird reddish pink eyes? That's what its eyes looked like. And it had weird reddish, kind of a pinkish skin. And the face was flat. It had a large nose, kind of like this, kind of, but it was kind of flat like that a little bit. And it looked in the window, and if I hadn't just gone to the bathroom, I probably would have done that right then, because I was that scared. And God, even though it's been all these years, I can still see that friggin' thing in my mind. My brain was shredded. I mean, I can't even describe it. It's like seeing something that you're always told doesn't exist, that is a myth and a legend, and until you see it. And no, it wasn't a guy in a costume. Costumes back then were Planet of the Apes. That was like one of the best costumes back in the 70s. Okay, so it wasn't a dude in a suit. It wasn't a bear. People are always saying, is it a bear? Is it a bear? I've been around bears. I've seen every type of bear you could show me, either in a zoo or in real life, and I've been very close to them. It was definitely not a bear. Okay, this thing was a massive caveman-looking Bigfoot. I didn't even know what to call it back then, because I'd heard stories about Bigfoot, but when I saw it, I was so freaked out that I didn't even make the connection. And so it's sitting there staring in at me, and the whole event was probably 45, 50 seconds tops, if that. It seemed like it was hours, I kid you not. My grandma told me later on that she thought maybe it was because I had an adrenaline rush or something. And man, I'm sorry, this is really tough to talk about, man. When you really see something that close that people tell you doesn't exist, that it's a legend, it's not real, it's myths and legends, and you hallucinated or whatever. I was fully awake. I was not hallucinating. I am not mentally ill. I don't suffer from hallucinations, mental or otherwise. At 7 years old, I was not drinking. I've had people ask me, were you drinking? At 7 years old, man, if I'd been drinking, my grandma and grandpa killed me.
I think that's more a statement about them than it is you if they would assume a 7-year-old was drinking. You know what I'm saying? It'd be like, hey,
Well,
what are you doing?
they usually say that before they know I was 7 or whatever. I really only shared the story a few times until I was older, because I did tell a kid at school one time, and I got mercilessly bullied because that kid went around walking like, the Patterson Bigfoot, with the arms swinging and all that. And they'd walk around going, I saw Bigfoot, and so stupid. But yeah, anyway, so I'm looking at this thing. It's looking in the window, scares the hell out of me. And then I, 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 it felt like my throat had locked up,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just like totally freaked out, kind of like I am right now. Anyway, it's looking at me, and then all of a sudden I was able to kind of like go like, kind of like that. I finally got that out, and it kind of went like this, and then it went like that, and its eyebrows were like this, and then the eyebrows went down like that. It had these white eyebrows that were really long and bushy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the hair on the face it had hair like right here, but the front of the face was mostly hair free. It never opened its mouth, so I can't tell you about the teeth. And that just is what it is. But anyway, it kind of looks back like that, and then it looks at me and it kind of glares, and then it just kind of, turns around and walks off. And it walked very weirdly. It almost looked like it was gliding on, like I've been cross country skiing before years ago. It looked like that. It looked like it was gliding almost, not like a ghost or something weird like that. It had a really bizarre way of walking is all I can describe it as. And then it was out of sight in just like like probably about 30, 40 steps, I would guess, because the tree line was about a quarter mile away. And again, I'm guesstimating. I really don't know, but it was out of sight in just a few seconds. And once it hit the tree line, it was gone. And I didn't see it again. My grandpa came running in the room, and he was like, "What's going on? What's that screaming?" And I couldn't talk. I couldn't say anything. I could not say a word. I was struck dumb, and so he brings me in the front room, sits me on the couch, and he starts telling me, "Boy, calm down. You need to think." And I can't really tell you how long it took me to calm down, because I had so much adrenaline in me that it was just bizarre. But I finally stammered out, and I told him, I said, "Grandpa, I saw something out my window," and I said it was ugly, and it was big, and it was hairy, and I don't know what the heck that thing was, but it was horrible. And he looked at me and he said the craziest thing. I kid you not. He didn't say the moose are back, the elk are back, the deer are back, the bears, whatever. He didn't say any of that. He said the damned apes are back, is what he said. That's exactly what he said. And he knew exactly what I was talking about. I asked him what he meant. He wouldn't say anything. He turned white as a sheet, and his mouth was like in a straight line, and his lips were really tight. And he looked like he was reliving, like he'd seen a ghost or something. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like somebody who's seen something that scared them too. Now, I found out years later that from my grandma after he'd passed away, she told me that he had seen one when he was young also, but not like young like I was. He was like 19 or 20. And he'd been working on Mount Hood on a contract with the government to thin out the trees and stuff, so that, for forest fires and all that, so that they wouldn't have dry trees and all that. So anyway, he thinned out all the trees, right? I guess these Bigfoots had come up and they had uh, they had gone into the camp, I guess, and he said they had a full fuel drum that was full of fuel, and they said it was about 40 gallons, is what my grandma said. And she said that somebody saw this thing pick up this drum, put it on its shoulder, and walk it to a ravine, and it picked it up with one arm and chucked it into the ravine. And they
Jeez.
actually weren't even able to recover it. And my grandpa told her that the one he saw was brown, and it had like a grayish color skin on it, but the description was very similar to the one I saw, but not the same, because it had grayish skin, it had dark black eyes, and the one that I saw was just bizarre. I mean, it shredded my brain. I was like, and it was weird because everything was dead silent. I mean, there's usually crickets out at that time in the summertime. There's crickets, you know, you can hear those little frogs and stuff, and you can hear like all that going on. Dead silent. I mean, it was almost like you were in a bubble or something. It was weird. And I can't even explain that. I'm not a scientist. I don't know how to tell you what the heck that was, but whatever it was, it was bad. So my grandpa knew what it was, but again, he would never discuss it with me. So I was never able to question him directly, and I can only tell you what my grandma said. And so that's what I saw. But like I said, it was an albino, and it left really big footprints that were about, I think my grandpa said when he measured them, they were like 20 something inches, and they were about 7 inches wide, 20 inches long and 7 inches wide. And the tracks were pressed deep into the ground. When my grandpa walked beside the tracks, he didn't even leave an impression. My grandpa was 6 foot, about 250, and he didn't even leave an impression in the ground. And the other weird thing about the footprints is they were in a straight line. I mean, you know how humans walk and our feet walk like this, right? It walked like this, and its feet were in a straight line. And the length of the stride was about 5.5 feet. And I'm sorry, it still freaks me out when I talk about that. I know it's stupid, but it is what it is.
Well, no, I can't imagine. Like, it's one thing to see it just out in the yard, but it's another thing to have its face right up. Now, was this a screen or was it glass in between?
No, just glass. There was no screen on our windows at all.
Okay. So, I mean, it's like you're looking at it on a TV screen right in front of you. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I can't imagine as a kid. I got to commend you that you didn't take off running. I mean, even though you were scared probably to death and couldn't move, you said. But I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, it would be like looking at a monster at that age.
Pretty much.
And so he actually then the next day let you go out and kind of look at the footprints and stuff.
He wanted me to see it for some reason. He wouldn't really talk to me about it. He did tell me what the track length was and the stride and all of that, and how big the footprints were. But the only thing he ever said about it to me was the damned apes are back. You know, not the bears, not the moose, not the elk. The damned apes are back. He knew what it was.
And so how close was that to when he actually was getting up to go to work?
It was, like I said, it was 1:30 in the morning, and he wasn't getting up to go to work. That was, like I said, in July. He had the July 4th off, and then he had taken a couple days off extra because we were going to go fishing and all that, which I refused to do after that. I was like, I'm never, ever, ever going in the friggin' woods again.
Well, what I'm saying is, though, is You imagine what's going through his mind then too. Like, crap.
What
Am
if
I
I walk out and this
Yeah.
damn thing's out there?
Yeah.
Well, if it's any consolation, he never went without a firearm.
Oh man. Geez, and it's too bad. And you, I mean, and I know you've done a deep dive trying to figure out, what this stuff is and listen to other stories, but that's a common theme for somebody who's young and has an experience that they have a parent or a grandparent or a relative that has had the same experience and they won't talk about it. And, they find out later through another party. Yeah, your grandpa or your grandma or so-and-so did see. And it's like, why wouldn't, you think they'd want to make you feel better by saying, hey, look, you're not crazy. I had this experience and it didn't hurt me. It's not going to hurt you. Just, you got to be careful. You know what I'm saying? You think you'd want to protect your kid or grandkid or whoever a little bit by reassuring them that, hey, this is real, but don't worry, it's okay.
My grandpa, in his defense, was born in 1922, and he was very much the strong, silent type. He did not speak a lot about anything. If he said something, it was straight and to the point. So I don't think that his parents showed him that kind of stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he could in turn show that to me. He was an excellent human being and a great man, in my opinion. But I think that due to his upbringing, I don't think he could really help me with that. And plus, he had his own traumatic experience with it. So
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
knows? I can't explain it, and he's not here to give his side of the story, unfortunately. But it is what it is.
Now, have you come across uh, any more experiences from this area, and let alone have you heard of any more that are of an albino Bigfoot? Because that's not, I mean, not saying that that's never, I mean, there's plenty of reports about albino ones, but it's, certainly very rare.
I did talk to Peter Byrne in the early 90s, and I was a member of the Western Bigfoot Society, and their meeting place was in St. John's, Oregon. It was run by a gentleman named Ray Crowe, Crowe.
Hmm.
I believe he's passed away a few years back, but I did meet with Peter Byrne. I'd shared my story with him, and he said that, in his opinion, he said that he'd heard of albino stories, but he said none like mine. He said they were never described quite like mine. But one thing I told him was that the eyes on this thing were real small and set real close together. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah.
And when I told him that, he said, I would label your sighting a Class A sighting for that detail alone. Because he said, he said, no offense. He had a British accent and always like, no offense, but you don't seem like a well-educated man, and he said, I mean that not rudely, but, he said that is a trait of inbreeding, is what he said. The eyes small and round and set close together.
Really? Okay. All right.
And again, I don't know if that's true. I'm simply telling you what the man said. I'm not an expert. I'm not into any of that. I can only tell you what he said. So,
Yeah. So everybody listening, it's got small, beady, close set eyes. Don't be sending in comments claiming you're not inbred. Right? Don't send us comments saying that's not true. Okay.
right. And I'm not saying it is. I'm saying that's what the man told me.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, but I mean, that's interesting that he had that observation. I mean, he's uh, certainly a legend in the Bigfoot world. So yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting for sure. Because you don't get, you're right, you don't get that, you just don't get that close of a lot of people don't see that close like you did. And it just, again, goes into why 40, 50 years later, it's still shaking you up, you know? Jeez.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't
But
imagine.
on my dad's side, my grandmother is Yupik, Alaska Native, and I talked to her about it, and she told me the Yupik stories of the hairy man up in Alaska, and she said that her people had been seeing them since long before any other peoples were up there. And she said that the hairy man is something they know about. They say he's not a friend. None of our stories that I've heard from tribal members of the Yupik tribe have described the hairy man as being a friend or a kind or a benevolent being. Also, I hear a lot of people saying that they see Bigfoots that are associated with orbs and that they disappear or they go into portals or they're associated with UFOs. I can't verify or not verify that. I've met well-meaning people who believe what they believe, but the one I saw didn't do any of that. So I can only tell you about the one I saw. I can't tell you about what other people think or how they believe. But I did spend a lot of time in different. I used to work for the Salvation Army, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was a pastor for a few years, and they transferred me to Prince of Wales Island, which is in Alaska. It's southeast, I believe, of Ketchikan, and I was there, and I never saw a Bigfoot, thank God, but we did have an experience there where we got kind of chased out of the woods by something. Now, my brother said he did see it, but he said that it was like an ape, but he said it was black skinned and black haired. I didn't see it, so I can't verify that. But you know, because I was busy getting in the car, because I was like, "F this, I'm out of here," you know. But one of the things that I found very interesting is I've talked to a lot of people because of my work with the Salvation Army. I've worked on different reservations. I've worked on the Navajo reservation. Um, and when I was on the Navajo reservation with the Salvation Army in Farmington, New Mexico, I heard a lot of stories from them too. And the funny thing is how similar they were to the stories that my grandmother told me from Alaska. And, you know, it's always funny to me because scientists are always saying, there's no evidence for Bigfoot. Where's the bodies? You know, and it's like, why would Native Americans living in different parts of the country who had no historical interaction make up an ape when there is no natural ape documented as being in the United States? You know, so
Mm-hmm.
how would they make that up, especially when they had no trade routes in common and they were on different parts of the country? For instance, why would people in the Southwest make up a creature, then in Canada, then in Alaska, then in other parts of the world, make up these weird creatures if they didn't exist? And, you know, it would take to me a great leap of imagination for all of these people. Like, for instance, I talked to a man who was from Australia, right? I hope I'm not getting off topic. If
Oh,
I
no,
am,
no.
I'll shut up.
Oh, no, no,
Okay.
no, no.
But I talked to a man who was an Aboriginal from Alaska or from Australia, excuse me. And he said to me that, you know, they have stories in their among their people. And he said that, you know, the description of the Yowie or Yahoo was very similar to what we described as Bigfoot. And you know, how are people in Australia who were separated for thousands of years from any other culture making up stories about gigantic, hairy, upright walking bipedal apes? You know,
Well,
that takes.
well, and I think it's not just him telling you that, but I think there is. newspaper archival evidence that there were reports in the 1800s in Australia in the newspapers. At the same time, there was reports here in the 1800s of, hairy men or wild men or whatever. They they certainly weren't, reading the Cleveland Plain Dealer in Melbourne, Australia. You know what I'm saying? And vice versa, and getting the idea, so it's more than just, hey, we heard these stories and they're similar. They're actually in print, an archive form where you can go back and dig some of that stuff out. And I mean, there's just way too much. And you're right. The stuff from Alaska to New Mexico, you would not think. Now, stranger things have happened, but you would not think that those people would have any contact with people in the American Southwest, what is now the American Southwest, And if you did, well, is that the first, like if you're all of a sudden you got in the Colorado River and ended up in New Mexico from, is the first thing you're going to talk about is, hey, by the way, do you got these hairy wild wild men up there? That's not the first. It's like, hey, can you help us, food, water? Can we get some shelter for the night? It's not the first first thing that a topic. But do you have some more detail about you and your brother getting run out of the woods?
Yeah, that took place in April of 2011, and again, it was on Prince of Wales Island. There's a road that goes from Powak up to it dead ends, and you can only go one of two ways, right or left. And I think the road was called like Big Salt Lake Road or something. And anyway, you get to this T in the road, and you can go right or you can go left. So I'm taking my brother, and we're going along because I wanted to show him the island, right? And so anyway, we get about a half mile up the road. And again, this is guesstimation. I didn't measure it. But, and my brother was diabetic. Now, unfortunately, he's passed on too, and he can't give his side of the story. I really wish he could be on here too, because he could tell you what he saw. I can only tell you what he told me. I didn't see it. But here's what I did experience. So we pulled off the road because he's diabetic. He said, I need to, urinate and all that. So we pulled off on this thing. It looked like an old logging road or something. So we pulled off into that. He got out, walked around the corner, did his business, and then came back around the corner. And he stopped at a snowbank. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, what? And he goes, hey, come here. And I'm like, what? It's cold. I don't want to go out there. It's like, anyway, there's snow on the ground. I didn't want to mess with that. So anyway, I'm going in there, right? And I walk up to it, and there's these footprints in the ground. And as soon as I saw those footprints, man, these things, they're probably about like, if it was a shoe, it'd be about a size 16, triple E, wide. And again, they were in the straight. I knew exactly what the hell that was. Okay. And so I'm like, we need to get out of here right now. And so I'm walking back to the car, and he's kind of dragging his feet. And so I'm facing this direction, right? Toward the vehicle is right here in front of me. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking toward the vehicle, and I turn around and I was like, Morgan, come on, and he goes, well, what if I want to see something, and I was like, I told him, get in the van, dude, come on. And right as I turned back around, I looked to the right, and I heard this I've heard bear, I've heard elk, I've heard deer, wolves, coyotes, whatever. I heard a really loud growl, and it was like, "Whoa, whoa," just like that. Scared the hell out of me. Now, I didn't see anything, but as I looked over to the right, all of a sudden this tree started shaking, and it was a cedar tree. It was a good sized tree. It started shaking back and forth. Okay. And I've seen those trees on Prince of Wales. I could not move one of those trees at all if I were to shake it. And at the time, I'm 6'6", I weighed about 400 pounds. I couldn't shake a tree like that, like it did. And so, again, I didn't see it, but my brother claims that he had heard something and he turned around and he saw a head peek out from behind the tree about 7.5 feet off the ground. And he was just like, nope, you know, and we got in the van and got the hell out of there, right? And, but something like threw a rock. Okay, bears don't throw rocks, at least not that I'm aware of. Never seen that or heard of it, but who knows? Could be. But when that screech that growl that it let out, I felt it in my body. It was almost like a sonic punch. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing I forgot to tell you too, is that when that Bigfoot was walking away, it let out a really weird screech. And I've only ever heard something that was like that on the show Sightings. And it was from a Sergeant Ken Cooper, who was a tribal police member on the Lummi Reservation in Washington State. He played that song, or he had recorded this thing screeching, and I can't even really describe it. It's really high pitched and it's very bizarre. But the screech, the Bigfoot I saw when I was a kid in Hood River, that it let out was a lot like that screech that Sergeant Cooper had recorded. Wasn't exact, but it was very similar.
Well, you sent me a link to that. We'll, at the very least, we'll put a link in the description if anybody wants to go check out that interview with Ken Cooper, and to hear what you experienced, you know. And I watched that and I'm like, okay, if I was a kid, I'd be, just that screech alone is enough to, you know what I'm saying? Enough to scare me. But it's an interesting interview with him too. You know, that's a very, you know, he was a law enforcement officer. It was interesting that he had the wherewithal back then, because it took place in the 70s.
Yeah, like 75 or something.
And he had any kind of technology to record anything, you know. So it's kind of cool to listen to. So yeah, check out the link in the bottom and go check that out if you want to. It's a neat interview, and then you get to hear some pretty good evidence of something making a screech. So your brother sees the thing lean over. How quick did he get into the car then?
He right in the car. He was like, my brother's big. He's bigger than me. He got in that car so fast. I had never seen him move that quick in my life. And he got in the van. We took off, and I went straight back to the church. I was like, screw this. I'm not taking him around the island. And then I talked to one of the Tlingit elders named Al Jackson, and I do have his permission to use his name. And he on the island was called Mr. Bigfoot. He's the one who showed us those upside down trees that I was telling you about.
Oh, yeah.
The ones with the roots facing skyward that are shoved like 3 to 4 feet in the ground. Now, I've seen those trees, and they don't have any rope marks, any chain marks, nothing. No means of being lifted. And these things were jammed into the ground, probably 3 to 4 feet into the ground. And this wasn't like a windstorm happened and the tree blew over and then somehow got jammed into the ground, because these trees are all over the island. And the Al Jackson told me, and other elders have confirmed, of the Tlingit tribe and the Haida as well, who live in Heidelberg on Prince of Wales Island, all said that the Bigfoots there do that to mark their territory. And they said if you see those things, you're not supposed to go around there. You're supposed to like not hunt, not fish, not go around there. Because he said that they're very territorial. And he said that, if you stay around there, something bad might happen to you. He didn't elaborate. That's just what he said.
Well, I want to point out that if your brother's bigger than you,
Mm-hmm.
and then you got out of the car and your brother is urinating in the snow,
Mm-hmm.
that Bigfoot probably thought, I don't know who these two big dudes standing over there peeing in my backyard are, but I'm going to show them who's boss. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I mean, you might think, man, these are too big. I don't know. I've never seen these guys before, but if they think
Well,
they're going to.
I wasn't out there urinating. I want to be clear on that. I was in the van.
But I'm saying your brother's out.
Yeah.
But I'm saying your brother's out there.
He might have pissed them off. I never really thought about that. That very well could have been what pissed those Bigfoots off.
Yeah,
These dumb guys peeing in my yard.
Yeah, especially
I never thought of that. That's a good point.
Especially if he's that big and they're looking from the tree line, they're probably like, Jesus Christ. And then there's another one, and gets out. You get out, and they're like, from whatever distance, you guys look probably gigantic to whoever's looking across the field, and they're probably like, we got to get these guys out of here. We're not going to deal with these guys taking our women. You know what I'm saying? That's probably what they were thinking. So, holy smokes. No, it's kind of cool though that your brother got to experience something, and because I'm sure you told him your experience, and it kind of was something you guys could.
Well, I told him years ago, but yeah, he knew about what I'd seen, but he said it didn't look nothing like the one I saw.
Wow. So all these, so I know it's still setting with you and scary, but all these years later, if you had another chance to see one on more of your own terms, would it be something you would be interested in doing? Nope.
No. I don't. If I'm driving through a forested area, like at night or something, I got my head on a swivel. I'm always looking around. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it's like, I try to avoid driving at night, especially in areas where there's like woods and stuff, or, if there are places where they're around. I really don't ever want to see one again. I don't go hunting for them. I don't, try to go to places where they've been seen. I don't want anything to do with that.
Interesting. I mean, I don't blame you. I just, it's just something I wondered all these years later that, in knowing that that these things are real, and you have maybe have a different perspective. But I'm sure, as you're telling that story, I could still see the 7-year-old boy, how terrified you were. So it makes sense that you wouldn't want to see one again. So, but I appreciate you coming on and sharing that story and all the other insight. But I think it's going to be hard pressed to beat that experience from other eyewitnesses. I'm just going to put it out there because that to me is one of the best. I mean, one of the best looks at a face of a Bigfoot that I've heard, description wise. And I mean, I'm sorry I don't have a prize to give you for that, but
I don't want one. I really, and I'm being honest.
Yeah.
I really wish I'd never seen that doggone thing. I really do.
No,
I if I could like go back in time and kick my own butt and like hold myself down, I'd do it in a New York second, man. I don't ever. I wish to God I'd never seen that gosh darn thing. Very traumatic. I don't want to experience that again, ever.
Nope, I totally understand, and that's why I appreciate you coming on and sharing it, because I think it's a story that needs to be out there and have people hear. So I appreciate that. Appreciate that. So thanks so much for coming on and hanging out for a little bit. And I hope you get your wish and you never do have to run into one again.
Me too. Thank you very much. It's been an honor. I hope you have a wonderful night.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the From the Shadows podcast. Until next time, never shy away from the darkness or what may be lurking in the shadows. We are out.
God only knows what's hiding